Thank you. Hello.
Hi.
Well, you know the title of the presentation, so can we get some projects? What do you guys want to do? Can anyone tell me their dream project? I know someone wants to write a book.
Yes.
Someone else wants to get a drip irrigation system set up. It is, but it's done. She got it done. What else?
I'm creating classes that I'll teach,
What kind of classes?
creativity classes.
Creativity
A while back, kind
classes.
of opening up people to their, a playful, like getting in touch with their playfulness again.
I love it. That sounds fun. And did you raise your hand in the back?
Yeah, I just have to stand up to talk, so. Poetry, I like to write poetry.
Oh, I would like to write poetry too. Okay, so we have some writing projects, some physical projects. You wanted a grown-up bedroom. You got a new bed already. That's a good step. So how many of you feel like maybe you don't have time or you don't know where to start? Anyone? Yeah? Everyone? Okay. So then you're in the right place. No, this is my first time doing PowerPoint, so it worked. Okay, so you're in the right place if any of this sounds familiar. If you feel like you haven't gotten around to doing your dream project, but you have it in mind, you know what you want to do, or the idea of getting started is overwhelming and you don't know where to begin. You've started a project, but life gets in the way and you just don't finish. I know a lot of people who have a bunch of unfinished projects lying about under the bed. And if you're afraid that if you don't get around to it and nothing changes, then you might die without ever getting that out there. Like maybe it's a big story to you that you want to tell. Maybe it's a song you want to write and share with people, or maybe it's just for yourself. And we're all busy, right? So you're in the right place if you barely have time to sit down and eat, let alone write a book, do a painting, whatever. So what you'll discover today is the real reason you haven't started or finished your project, the 4 components you need in place to get it done without willpower. Everyone always says to me, you have so much willpower, but it's not willpower. Everyone can do this, no matter how busy you are. And how to keep going even when you encounter obstacles. And I want you to walk away today realizing, like, I can do this. Okay, so here's a little bit about me. I'm a wife and a mom of 3 kids. They're 12, 10, and 7.5. Every time someone asks how old she is, she's 7.5. You have to say the half. I'm a professional copywriter, which is writing for marketing, and I'm a staff writer and copy editor for Prescott Women magazine. I have tons of freelance jobs. Well, not tons, but I run a ton of half marathons, a sprint triathlon, and I'm training for my first marathon, which is a month from today.
Yeah.
I know.
Especially the Whiskey Road.
Yeah, I know. I'm terrified. And I'm the author of 9 women's fiction novels. You can see them there. So why am I telling you all this stuff about myself? It's not because I'm amazing. It's because I have a really full life, and I'm sure you do too. But I've created a system for getting all these projects done. So a long time ago, my mom used to tell me, like, just write a novel, because it's always been my dream to write a novel, you know? And I was like, Mom, stop saying it. Oh, just go write it. Like, it was so easy, right? I kind of rolled my eyes a lot. I was like, I'm too busy, or I need to learn more stuff. I should take a class or something like that. Then, about maybe 8 years ago, I signed up for my first running race. It was a 10K, which is like 6 miles. It was the Tour Day PV. It was over there by Harkins Theaters, you know. And I started training for it. And I'd never been much of a runner. And at first, I was running like 3 miles. And I felt like, oh my gosh, this is so far. There's no way I can run 6 miles. But I'd already signed up for the race. So I didn't want to waste my money. So finally, it was race day. And the farthest I'd run was like 4.5 miles. And one of my friends was telling me, you can do it. You can run 4.5 miles. You can run 6 miles. I was still terrified. But I went and did it, and I completed the race. I wasn't super fast, but I did it. Oh my gosh. And I think that's when my life changed. I realized if I could train for a race when I'd never been a runner, then I could do anything. So I started writing novels. That's when I first started. And I have a few under my bed, like, you know, some first drafts that aren't that good, but that's okay. I did it. So even though I have a lot going on, I have a system, and I think you can use my system to finish your project. So what's the real reason you don't have time to be creative? It's not because you're too busy or you have too much going on or you're too old or too young or you're not smart enough or creative enough. It's not because your muse isn't on standby, and it's not because the timing isn't quite right. The real reason you don't have time to be creative is because you haven't made the decision to start and finish your project. Now you may have started it, but have you really made the decision, I'm going to finish this thing? Maybe not. And then this was a video, but it wasn't working when we set up, so we'll just skip over this slide. The dog's like, what? So if you haven't made the decision, then these things might be stopping you. Or if you've started it, but you haven't finished. You might be afraid that you're going to be terrible at whatever your project is, or that you have these great expectations for it, but you're not going to live up to those expectations. Or maybe you don't even know what to do, or you think like, oh, I'll get started and then I won't know what to do to keep going. You might be afraid of being visible, like putting yourself out there and other people seeing your project. Or maybe it's a limiting belief, like limiting belief sounds kind of woo-woo, but it's kind of like you think that you don't have time, or you think you never finish what you start, so why even begin? Or you think, oh, I'm going to sit down to work on it and the creativity just won't flow to me, like my muse won't be there. I'll get writer's block or whatever. Also, you might have a lack of prioritization. A lot of people don't want to hear that, but where are you really spending your time? Like if you're watching 3 episodes of, I don't know, what do you guys like to watch? Stranger Things, I love that one. Then maybe you should cut back on that TV time and watch 1 hour of TV, or maybe you're sleeping in because you love sleep, but you could get up a little earlier. And then the last thing that might be stopping you is inaction. Like how many times have you thought about this project but not actually done something about it? Like the other day I got a box of brownie mix, put it on the kitchen counter, and my daughter's like, ooh, are we having those for dessert? And I'm like, well, we have to make them. So like, do you have an unopened brownie box sitting on your counter? Maybe you do. You have to actually put the mix in the bowl, put it in the pan and bake it, right? So I forgot to do this slide. Once you've made the decision to begin and finish, nothing can stop you. But that's not all. You also need the right mindset, a plan that you implement, and action. Action is really important. Okay, so we're going to start with mindset. So the dictionary defines mindset as a mental attitude or inclination. So we all kind of know what that is, right? But let's talk about growth mindset. There's a psychologist, Dr. Carol Dweck, and she coined the term growth mindset. And basically, you can read it there, but what it says is, when people believe that they can improve, they're apt to work harder at something. So if you start a creative project and it's not going well, you need to know that it's going to get better. And here's something really cool. We all know kids' brains grow so fast, right? 0 to 5, it's like the main developmental time in our whole lives. But guess what? Grown-ups' brains can grow too. When you create new habits, your nerves connect more. Neural pathways, that's it. More neural pathways form, and you're actually using more of your brain. So the more you do your project, whatever it is, writing music, singing, your brain will grow and support your work. So when you have a growth mindset, you know that your brain will grow and eventually it will feel easier. Even if it seems hard now, it'll get better. Even if you write something now and it seems terrible, you can improve. And your brain will improve and adapt and grow as you do it. So with that in mind, as you're working on it, go easy on yourself. Like, things are gonna come up, you know. I wrote here, of course you're gonna have resistance. It might look like procrastination. You might have a big work or school project. Your electric bill is way higher than you expected and you have to get on the phone and talk to them for hours and figure out why. The dog might eat chocolate. Your kid has a hair emergency. These are things that have happened to me. But it's okay. Like, these things do happen, but if you just know that things will continue improving and you just stick with it, then you'll still get it done. It shouldn't be like a thing where you're pressuring yourself and stressing out about it, because then it's not fun. Sometimes these resistances will show up as procrastination, distractions, how many times are you going to check your email today? I mean, oh, I need to mop the floor, but you didn't need to mop the floor 5 minutes ago. So there's a saying that goes around, like the writer's world, like butt on the chair, fingers on the keyboard. Like, work on it. When it's time to work on your project, work on it. Pay attention to what you're getting distracted by, and you'll realize, like, oh, I'm distracted now. I need to get back on task here. So another thing is your inner critic. That's kind of what I call a creative challenge. So here, let's talk about the creative mindset. I hope you guys can read these. They're kind of hard to read, but this is from the movie Tangled. Have you guys seen that movie? So there's this cute scene where she's having so much fun. She's out with the guy. I forget his name right now. But they're out in the forest having so much fun. She finally escaped her evil mother, right? And so she's like, oh, this is the best day of my life. This is the worst day of my life. My mom's going to be so sad. So this is like the creative take on that. So I can't believe I wrote that. Oh, this scene is so hideous. Well, that's okay. The rest of the story makes up for it, right? Oh my gosh, this story is awful. The story is so awesome. I'm a horrible author. I'm going to quit. I'm never going to quit. I'm a despicable writer. Best story ever. Sobbing, right? So true. That's exactly what happened. Okay, and then here's another similar one, The Circle of Woe. So, new novel, so new project, right? We're so excited. What am I going to do? Oh, maybe this isn't that good. Oh, this sucks. I hate it. I should never have started this. I'll never make the deadline. So she goes through the whole process. Just get to the end. Just get to the end. Die, book, die. I'm done. Oh my God, I'm done. That's so accurate for so many of our projects, right? But just so you know, that's totally normal. Like, every project feels that way. And it's totally normal. And again, with the growth mindset, if you can just tell yourself, I can get through this, I can improve, my process can improve, it will improve and you'll get it done. So how do you stay the course when these things, your inner critic, procrastination, your kid's hair emergency, the electric company, all these things, how do you stay the course when those things arise? So this is why I mentioned running. If you can think of your creative project as a long distance run, a marathon even, that metaphor can get you from start to finish. So that's when my life changed, when I started thinking of each project as a doable long distance run. So I think this can help you too. So how are they similar, a creative project and a run? The first thing is you begin by setting a goal. You know what you want your project to be. That's like signing up for a race. So that race has an end date, right? Like the Whiskey Row Marathon is on May 4th this year. So then you make a plan, right? So if you're doing a run, you make a training plan. If you're doing a creative project, you make a creative plan. And we'll get a little more into that in a minute. And then you get the right equipment. Like for a run, you need the right shoes. If you have cheap running shoes, then you're going to get injured, a lot of blisters. And then you train. So again, this is back to the action. So if you sign up for a race, you're not just going to show up on race day and run. You probably won't be able to finish. You have to do a little bit throughout the training period. Some days you really don't want to go for that run. Some days you really don't want to work on your project, right? Some days there's obstacles. Like the other day on my run, I'm wearing these tall compression socks and I had a Band-Aid on my toe and it came off. And then it was like rubbing around on my tips of my toes. Like that was so annoying. That wasn't the only thing that happened. And I thought, like, I'm just gonna go home. But I was only 2 miles into my 18-mile run. So I couldn't go home. I had to stop, take off my sock, take the Band-Aid out. Anyway, so these obstacles happen. This is real life. They happen. But when you push through, do the plan, put in the practice, you'll get to the end, to the finish line. Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about the plan. So step 1 is define your goal, right? So whatever you want your project to be. It might be a book, it might be a bedroom, a drip system, it can be anything, a cross-stitch project. And then you break your goal into smaller pieces. So you can break it up into, if it's a book, amounts of pages you'll write each day, or how many words you'll write each day. You can also do like a time, you know, I'll work for 10 minutes each day. Even if you start small, that's okay. Step 3 is create space in your schedule. And I know this one's tricky, but we'll get more into that in a minute. We're going to go over each step in more detail. Get the equipment and tools you need is step 4. And then step 5 is discover what works for you in terms of creativity, physical space, and process. And be flexible. So what works now might not work next week because schedules change and what you have going on changes. And it's okay for your plan to change too when that happens. So step 1 is define your goal. I'm sure you guys have heard of SMART goals, which is a specific, measurable, achievable, relevant to you, and time-bound. So I don't want you to get stressed out about this, but if you have a project that you want to do, you should put a deadline on it. Now, it doesn't need to stress you out. Once you have the deadline, you can change it, right? You can do a little bit at a time. If you get going and realize, oh, I'm not getting as much done each day as I expected, you can move your deadline. But if you don't have a deadline, you're really not giving your mind what it needs to really finish the task. It's just thinking, oh, I can do this in perpetuity. But that's not what we want. We want an end goal, right? Okay, and then step 2 is break your goal into smaller pieces. So you might write a book chapter by chapter, a certain number of words each day, a scene each day, or you can just do a time, like 60 minutes, 10 minutes. Start with 5 minutes if that's what you want to do. So if you're doing a song, you might write a verse each day, or like the chorus, or bridges, or just the music, or just the words. Same with poetry, stanza by stanza, right? You might not sit down and write a whole poem or a whole book of poetry in one day. And then same with a screenplay, similar to a book, like you might do scene by scene or element by element. Okay, so you don't have to sit down and write it all at once. Okay, so let's talk about creating space in your schedule, because I know a lot of people struggle with this. And I'll tell you what works for me, and it might not be what works for you, but I think you can learn from how I figured out what works for me. I get up early. I get up at 5 before my kids get up. The earliest one gets up at 6:45, or sometimes he sneaks up at 6:30. But that gives me basically almost 2 hours to do my writing with no kids, no one having emergencies, no one needing anything from me. For me, it works to get up before anything else can get in the way of me getting my writing time in. So, you know, sometimes when you wake up, all of a sudden you get that email where it's like, oh, you have to deal with this immediately. So I get up before that. I don't check my email. That way I can't be sidetracked by real life stuff that comes up. And then we talked about prioritizing a little bit already, but is there anything in your schedule that you can let go of? Like I used to volunteer every single week at my kids' school, but I cut that down. So now my days are more for me and my work and writing time. And I still volunteer occasionally, but not as often as I was before. I was doing once a week in each of their 3 classes. So that was actually a lot of time that was taken away from my writing. So is there anything you can let go of? And I know it's hard because everything feels important, right? But just really dig deep and think like, what's really important to me, or what can I shift so I'm maybe still doing it but doing less of it to make more time for my creative project. Multitasking is a really big one. With all the technology we have today, you can get a lot done even when you're doing a lot of other things. So when I take my kids to a sports practice, I usually use that time to do something else. Maybe I go for a run. Now that my daughter's in dance, I sit in the car and I'm writing the whole time while she's in her dance class. if you're driving, you can dictate into your voice recorder, even your phone. You don't have to buy something fancy. A lot of writers are dictating like one book a week just by driving, doing it on their commute and things like that. I work from home, so I don't have a commute, but I think that I'm going to start multitasking dog walking and voice recording, right? Which is like multitasking writing while you're walking the dog. That's pretty awesome. So it's just think of things that you could do concurrently with your project. Some things are harder, like cross-stitching, but, well, someone was saying they have a cross-stitching project and you can't do that while you're driving, right? But maybe like after dinner, you could let the kids watch 1 half-hour TV show while you work on your project or something like that. And then the last item here is ask for help and maybe even offer a trade. So if there's someone else that can help you. For me, what I need help with is like someone watching my kids, right? Like they're not gonna necessarily sit around nice and get along nicely while I work on my writing. But when my kids were even younger, I would ask a friend to watch them for a couple hours and then I would watch her kids for a couple hours. So there's always things like that you can do if you need help. Like maybe it's just support too, like emotional support. Like, hey, can you look over this first draft and tell me what you think? Or, you know, and maybe you can help your friend with something else like gardening, I don't know. Okay, so let's talk about equipment and tools. We talked about running shoes. You're not gonna go running in cheap shoes. Same thing with your project. Like, don't let not having a fancy equipment stop you from getting started. But there are some things that you can use to really speed up your process. For example, there's a lot of great writing softwares out there for outlining and writing your book. They save a ton of time, you know, navigating like a Word document. What kind of physical space do you need? I know someone who needed a new physical space for writing. What do you need? Do you need it to be quiet? Can you go to the library? Can you go to the park? What would work well for you? A designated notebook. So if you think that would help you have like this beautiful notebook that you get to look at every time, oh, that makes it feel so good to open it up and start writing my poetry, you know? And then I've never written music, but you know, music has the lines and then you write the notes. Like maybe you need that special paper. Maybe you need a template, like a lot of screenplays and novels. You can get templates for writing those and that might help you just get it done if that's stopping you. And then I mentioned voice recording earlier for dictating. You can voice record right into your phone, but if you think dictating is something you would enjoy, get a voice recorder. A lot of them plug right into your computer. You can just plug it in and it'll download that voice recording, and then there's even software that'll transcribe it for you into, you know, typed words. So that's pretty awesome. That's a time saver. Okay, so discover what works for you and adjust as necessary. So you'll see at the bottom I say adjust but don't cop out, right? So we're gonna go more into habits in a few minutes, but pay attention to what's going on for you. What are your energy cycles like? There might be certain times of month based on like what you have each month in your life where you have way more creative energy. There might be times when you're better at editing. There might be times when you're more distractible. Pay attention to what distracts you. Is it the children? Is it your dog? Is it your spouse? That's me. So then you work around that. If you know something's gonna distract you, work around it. Don't set yourself up for failure by having all those distractions present when you're working on your creative project. And you'll start to see, the longer you work on your creative project, the more patterns you'll see. And you can notice, so be introspective and notice the patterns. What happens? If you're in first draft mode and you're struggling with what's going to happen next, and then you check your email, then you need to be able to say to yourself, I notice that when I'm having a hard time thinking of what to do next, I check my email. And so it might not be email, it might be getting up to do those dishes or switch over the laundry, something you could do a little later. But if you notice what's happening when it's happening, you can usually stop that pattern and keep working on your project. And again, adjust but don't cop out. So if you're doing this for like 3 days and you're like, oh, this isn't working, don't try something new just yet. Keep trying the same thing for a little longer, maybe even a month or two before you try to change it up. Because you don't want to let yourself off too easy. I know I said don't stress out and go easy on yourself, but also hold yourself accountable, right? Okay, so here's some tips for getting to the finish line. The first step is always the hardest. Fuel yourself, focus on the step you're in, earn the view, and reward yourself. Okay, so we'll start with tip 1. The first mile is always the hardest. Stick with it, give things time, and be flexible. So whenever I go for a run, the first mile, I'm so tired. I don't know why. It seems like that would be easier. It's only the first 10 minutes. But after that, my body settles into a rhythm. My breathing settles, and then I'm like, oh, okay, this isn't that hard. I think it's the same with any creative project. You're still finding your footing, figuring out what's it going to be, what shape is this going to take, what tone is it going to have, and all that stuff. So let's talk a little bit here about habits. So there's this author, Jeremy Dean. He's also a psychologist. He wrote about a study that found that habits on average take 66 days to become automatic. So that's a long time. We've heard before it was 21 days. That was kind of the common belief, but I think psychologists and other people who study this stuff are finding out it actually takes a little longer. So give yourself time. Back to the adjust but don't cop out thing. It might take 2 months. It might take even longer. Some of the people on this study were on track to take almost an entire year to make something a habit. And it was something as simple as drinking a glass of water in the morning. So if it's something big that involves also like your inner critic, anything creative, right? Then give yourself more time. So if it's not working at first, remember your growth mindset and stay the course. And then if something's genuinely not working, figure out why and fix it. Like sometimes I wasn't getting out of bed at 5 because I was so tired. I would just turn off my alarm and then go back to sleep. So I moved my phone to the other side of the room. So now I just turn it off and then I walk right out. So that has helped. But whatever you do, don't give up. Keep taking action. If something doesn't go right, that's okay. Keep taking action. If you keep taking action, you'll eventually get it done, even if it's not on your original timeline. So tip 2 is fuel yourself. So when you go for a long run, your body needs water, carbs, protein, fat, and electrolytes. So your creative brain is like your body. You have to feed it. You can't expect it to just run on empty. So how do you fuel yourself creatively? Well, it depends on your project. But if you're writing a book, read more books. If you're writing a book too, watch movies, watch TV shows, but do it from the perspective of a creator. What works about this? What doesn't? Analyze the plot, the character development, or if it's music, analyze the different ways the instruments go together, the lyrics. Are they using metaphors? But pay attention from a different perspective. Instead of just being a passive viewer, be thinking from the standpoint of being a creator. And eventually, you'll start noticing what's really working and what's not working in the TV shows, books, movies, music, plays that you like and don't like. So tip 3 is focus on the step you're in. So if you're at the very bottom of a staircase, the top looks really far away. And this is different from the keep your eye on the prize advice, right? We have our why, we have our reason for what we want to do. That's kind of the prize, right? But when you're in a long climb, sometimes it feels like I can never get to the end of this. But just don't worry about it. Just focus on the step you're in. And I like to use this metaphor when I'm running up a really long hill. I sometimes look at the top of the hill and I'm like, oh, that's so far. I have one hill that's only a quarter of a mile, which isn't that far. But when I'm running, it feels really far. And I'm running so fast and my dog is just walking right next to me. That's how slow I'm going. But I think, oh, I'll just look at these little marks on the ground. Like, oh, there's a rock. I can run to that rock. Oh, there's a telephone pole. I can make it that far. And if you just focus on the step you're in and you keep going, you'll get to the end. So when you're in the middle of your creative project, don't only be thinking about the finished product. just think, if I can just get through this one session today, and usually you will, and then you'll get to the end. And tip 5 is you have to earn the view, right? So sometimes it feels like a long uphill climb. Sometimes it feels terrible. Sometimes it feels great. But when you get to the top, it's fantastic. When you finally write the end, or whatever you write at the end of your project, it's like, ah, you know, it's amazing. But you have to earn it. You have to put in the work. It's not just going to happen. The brownies are not going to make themselves. You have to earn it. So be willing to put in the work. Okay, and this is just a quick list of ways to overcome obstacles. So work your plan, stick to your plan. You have one. Feel free to adjust it. And then create solid habits. So there's 4 components to a habit, which are the cue, the craving, the response, and the reward. The cue is what you do before your habit. So you're going to be more successful in creating a habit if you fit it into your day after or before something that you already do. So for me, I already wake up and I already drink coffee. So my habit is my alarm goes off, that's the cue, and then the other cue are coffee, right? That's the other cue, just one cue. And then craving is like your why again, like why do you want to do this? So when you have a habit, that's what you have to keep in mind. Why are you doing it? Is it because you just want to share your story? Is it because you want to publish your book? Have people play your music, whatever. And then the response is doing the actual habit. And then the reward could be intrinsic, like, yes, I got through my session today. I wrote my 2,000 words. Or sometimes you have to really give yourself a reward, like a brownie. So it just depends what a reward is to you. And I'm sure you guys have heard people say, like, our habits really define our success, right? So it's what we do habitually that determines how successful we are. So people who eat healthy habitually, they're healthier, right? People who run habitually, they could run farther. If you work on your project habitually, you'll get more projects done. Use affirmations. Are you guys familiar with affirmations? It's like a positive statement that you say to yourself. I write mine. I write things like, I write great books and people love them. So, and so you might write, I finish my projects, or whatever it is. I write a great screenplay. And that helps shift your mindset. Be flexible. We already talked about that. Say one day you wake up and you plan to work for an hour, but something goes awry and you work only for 30 minutes. Maybe you can get your 30 minutes in somewhere else right before you go to bed. Or maybe you can't, and that's okay. You can do it tomorrow. Also, in terms of being flexible, you may find that working every single day on your project works for you. That's what works for me. Or you may find doing it twice a week works better, like for an hour each time, or once a week. But you have to find what works for you and be flexible about it. Again, be kind to yourself. Don't beat yourself up if you don't get through what you were supposed to get through that day. It's okay. Just keep taking action. Take care of yourself. If you're really tired, you're going to be grumpy. Nothing's going to go right. If you eat really badly, you're going to be tired. You're not going to have the energy to do something creative or not do it as efficiently. And then the bottom line is just keep moving forward and take action. And I just want to stress again the importance of taking action, because I think inaction is what stops a lot of us from getting from start to finish. Like, many of us are writing in our minds all day long. Like, so many of us have these great ideas. But if you don't sit down and actually take action, you're never going to finish, right? So don't underestimate that. Like, all the affirmations in the world aren't going to get your project done. So just a quick recap here. So the first step is to determine your why. Why do you want to get your project done? What is it going to mean to you? Then make the decision to do it, to start it and finish it. Then master your mindset. Remember the growth mindset and go easy on yourself. Know that you're going to improve, and the more you work on it, the better you're going to get and the easier it's going to feel. Then work the plan. So create your plan. You remember the steps, define your goal, break it into pieces, create space in your schedule, gather the tools and equipment you need, and be flexible. And, oh yeah, remember, this is a marathon. This is a long distance run, right? You're in it for the long haul. Even if the long haul, it might only take you a week to do it, but consider it step by step, one thing at a time, right? So, fuel yourself, focus on the step you're in, and earn the view. And above all, keep taking action. Keep working on it. Oh, wait. Okay, any questions?
Does coming and giving a lecture count as taking action? Just curious.
You know what? That's a really good question. And I admit that when one of the librarians first asked me to give a lecture, I felt kind of out of place. Like, I'm not really distinguished. I haven't really made it as an author. I don't make a living yet with my books. I make a living with my writing, but to me that's not as creative. It's really formulaic, the writing I do most of the time. But I think it's more taking action in terms of developing my mindset. Like, I realized, okay, maybe I do have something to share. I have written 9 books, plus I have maybe 4 more first draft books that I need to finalize. So maybe I do have something to share. And then it was taking action as far as stepping into that space where, like, okay, I do know what I'm talking about. Maybe I'm an expert a little bit on finishing a creative project. So I think it's more of that mindset piece. It obviously took time away from writing my books, but I think maybe it'll help me in a different way so that when I go back to writing my books, I feel more authorly. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay. You're welcome. Any other questions? Yes?
So, what's your process to develop a why that inspires you?
That is a really good question.
Because that's where I get stuck. It's like, I know I want to do this thing, I get stuck on the why. The beacon isn't bright enough.
Yes.
It needs to be so huge that I feel passionate about it, and then everything kind of falls into place. I can get the work done, because I can't get the why.
That is
How do
a
you
really
get your-
good
how do you get your
question.
why?
You know what? Mine comes from different things that I want in my life. So, for example, I always wanted to be an author. That was just something I wanted to do since childhood. And so that's where it kind of started. That was my why at first. That's pretty simple, right? But now, as there's different things that I want, I think that my author career could fulfill those things, like freedom. Like, I want time freedom where I just do my own thing. I can go wherever I want. I can write from wherever. And then, of course, money freedom, right? If I can make enough money, we could go on more RV trips. So for me, it's things that I want more of. It's that place where you see, like, of course, we all want to practice gratitude, but at the same time, if there weren't things we wanted, then we would never take action, right? So for me, I guess it comes from my desires, the things that I want to change in my life. Like, maybe your drip system was like, you want to have the green yard this spring, right? And that's something you wanted to change. And not using discontent in a negative way, but wouldn't it be nice to have everything on a drip system? You don't have to water everything, and then your garden grows. Right. So that's like something you wanted. So I guess if you could find a way to align your project with something you wanted. But again, it has to be a big enough want, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like, even if it's your bedroom that you want to go into a beautiful, restful, serene place, is that strong enough to redo your bedroom? You know, I don't know. So I think you just have to really dig deep and find out what you want that can drive you to finish something.
Maybe that's your next lecture.
Oh my. Maybe. Yeah.
I think part of what your answer to her,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
part of what your answer to her might be what you put up there about, like, getting support, like bartering. Maybe you want maybe she doesn't want to do it alone if she's doing a drip system to get friends or neighbors that'll help, you know, and make it a party. and have a pizza party afterwards and all
A
put it
pizza
together. I mean, like
party. No, that's a
drawing
really
on
good point.
resources, that's not just me alone.
Yes.
You know, and that can
Yes.
sometimes give me the solidity on my own. I might kind of float around, but with other people there in a time focused,
Yes.
things get done.
That's a really good point. So maybe in that case, like if you felt like you needed help or you wanted more of a community, you know, maybe that's your driver. That's another way of support. I don't know. That's a tough one. That's really tough. Yeah. Yeah.
I think it might be really personality driven as well.
Oh, yeah.
And searching inside yourself to say, what kind of a person am I?
Yes.
So if you're really other focused and you have 1,000 photographs under the bed and you're really other focused, maybe it's getting those photographs together for your kids.
Yes.
You know, or, you know, so kind of knowing your own personality
Yes.
and using that as a motivator
I think
as
that
well.
is so true. You're right. If you can frame it, give it a perspective, that would help you get it done. Yeah, that's why I said be introspective, because you're right. This whole thing is absolutely about figuring out what makes you tick to get it done and what distracts you from getting it done. And maybe if you say you do have 1,000 photographs and you want to sort them and that's your creative project, that's overwhelming, right? But maybe you do have a pizza party and have friends come over and help you sort them and sort them by person or year. And then you get that community, you get the support, you have your why, and then you can hand them over to your children and think, I never have to deal with this again. That's what my mother-in-law is doing right now. She's been sending us so many pictures. So, any other questions?
Well, just curious, like how much research do you do for your books? Like if you invent a character that that has a profession that you don't know, like a subway mechanic, okay?
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like how would you go about researching that?
So far, most of my characters have had jobs that I am fairly familiar with, whether it's a job I've had or someone I know really well has had that job. But my newest character is going to be a professional thief. So I haven't decided how how to research that. I'm going to research like some bank heists and stuff, like real life, you know, things like that. But I spend a lot of time at the library, so I'll check out some nonfiction books or maybe even some fiction books and just see what they're. But that's part of fueling yourself, right? Like give yourself the information you need. So that's probably how I'll do it. Tons of internet research. Did you have another question?
No, I was just going to suggest that for constructing a new character, maybe just get some note paper and scribble down ideas and see what feels right.
I love that idea. That sounds fun too. That's a good way to do something fun and just let yourself be free with it without putting too many constraints. That's a really good idea.
Well, mind mapping, where it is, we just start with the center point and then build on it and then build on and build and build on the different things that come up.
Yes, I
And
love that
sometimes
idea.
we get a backstory, sometimes we get something going forward or some, doesn't have anything to do with, but
Right.
it shows where maybe this trait or this mindset came from.
I love that. And they always say when you're writing that you should know 90% about your character, but you only write like 5% about your character. Or 10%, I don't know.
Seems like a lot of work, but it's
I know, it
how you
does.
get- It's how you get authentic characters.
Yeah, that's a great idea. I love that. Yeah?
Okay, this may be a little off topic, but I think it has to go with the craving. Okay, so say you totally are off track. I mean, you either break your leg and you can't run, or all of a sudden, you know, you're blind so you can't paint.
Okay.
Now, so where does, okay, that passion or that craving, so something like that you're so used to doing and you do well and you just, you know, you've got the habitual and the response and all of that mastered, but you don't have, maybe you call it burned out, you know,
Okay.
in some respects, or maybe it actually is a physical function. And as I said, maybe this is off topic, but if you've had this experience in any way, how do you start focusing back on a dream and getting that together? Because I think that's what some of us have, you know, or at least I've experienced in the past, and I would bet most of the people in the room have had this sort of burnout, or what do I do next? And I just am curious if you've ever been there and how you handle it.
Yes, I've been there, and fortunately I haven't had too many disasters, but I've definitely had periods in life, you know, they say things come in threes, and then all of a sudden your life is like overtaken by these other things that you really don't have control over. And there's been times when I used to be really stressed about it, like there's no way I'm going to get my words in today. But I've learned over time that sometimes that's just God or the universe or whoever you want to say telling you, take a step back, like just take a break, take a breather, don't even think about it. And then give yourself some time. And then I think pretty soon your mind starts coming back to it, like, okay, now maybe I'm ready to begin again. So whether it's burnout or an injury, a physical problem, I mean, if you really can't do what you were going to do before, you really can't do it. Maybe you can try a new method for your creativity. Like if you went blind, I guess you could paint blind, probably. People have done it.
Actually, there was a really good painter who was actually born with no eyes, and people say that his paintings are great.
Really?
Yeah.
So see, so if you really wanted to paint blind, you could do it. I mean, people compose music deaf, right? So maybe that's just the time. It's a signal. Step back, take a break, and I think you'll know when it's time to restart again. And if you really want to restart again, but for some reason you're hitting those obstacles, but you really want to restart, then maybe it's not about finding your motivation. Maybe it's about really just sitting down and forcing yourself to do it. Maybe at first, getting back into it, it's more like forcing yourself, because maybe then you're more in the middle of the process. Like right now I'm in the worst part of marathon training, like a lot of long runs all the time. And some days, like yesterday, I just really didn't feel like it. But I already have my deadline. I have to do it. So I went and did my run, it was fine. But, so maybe if you've already spent some time doing it, you're not at the beginning anymore, maybe you really have to just force yourself, just put in the work, put it on your schedule, make it a priority, and do it. And then I think at that point your brain would then come around and you would start working on it again. You would feel better about it. And that's the growth mindset again, like, okay, I was in a rut, but now I'm back. I don't know, does that help? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think what you were just saying about, I think sometimes when we're burned out, it's just because we're tired of doing, and so
Yes.
yeah, it's the response part. So yeah,
Yeah.
I think that was nice clarification. Thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah.
So I'm a teacher here, and I feel like I give this lecture all the time to my students to pull them through the semester.
Yes.
You did it much better than I do. I was writing down notes, but one thing that I help my students with is, like, so often we have like our why, and it's really a good thing. It's like your marathon and somebody's book or somebody's screenplay. But it just seems so big and so important,
so big.
and so we get kind of overwhelmed, right?
Yes.
So I tell my students, okay, you're working on that big essay that's like the final project, just log in and, you know, just do the introduction, you know, get started. And like you find, whoa, I did the introduction, so, okay, I'm gonna take a break, or like, wow, I just logged in, I told myself I was just gonna do the introduction to this essay, and wow, like I just flew through that. I can do another paragraph, you know?
I'm on fire.
Before you know, you're actually working on these big overwhelming tasks that you can do. So that was just one of my comments, if it helps anyone. But one of my questions is about your writing process, because I'm just interested in that. So when you write, do you shoot it all out there and revise later, or do you get it perfect and then you kind of just write until you get even a short paragraph perfect? And why?
Choice one. For me, just going through and just hammering out those words and then coming back and revising works for me. I think because, you know, they say like success loves speed. Not that we have to rush through things, but I find that if I'm just going faster and I get in a flow, that's how I can keep going. Some people might like to agonize over every word choice on their first draft, but for me, that slows me down too much. If I'm like, oh, let me go on thesaurus.com and find a better word for this word, I lose my momentum and I'm overthinking it and I'm unable to continue because then I'm second guessing everything. So that's my loud inner critic, but some people don't have that as much. So for me, I like to go through quickly through the first draft and then come back, and then I take more time to look up those thesaurus words and stuff like that. Does that answer your question? Okay. Anything else? No? Okay. Oh, do you have a question?
I just want to compliment you. I enjoyed the flow of all your slides and the organization that you put your ideas together with. So,
Thank you so much. It was my first time, so I really appreciate that. I thought long and hard about it. So thank you very much.